I had a really weird thing happen to me last weekend where my buddy and I were fishing really the same baits, same jerk baits, same color, same exact bait, same area, casting similar, working the bait pretty much the same, and they would hit his bait time after time. They would ignore mine. I mean, we'd stop where we had gotten a hit. We were drifting along the rocks, and he'd fight his fish in, and I would cast out the same area. I had 4 casts in by the time he got back out again. First cast, he's got another fish. It was insane. And that happens. I mean, I've been on the reverse end of that, but the only thing that was different was really the line color. That's the only thing I could think. And I had this Power Pro High Vis yellow, which I really like. I have like 5 of these in my bin over there. And I'm sure that I was catching no problem using this high vis line. I like the high vis line because I can see. There are a lot of techniques where it really helps if you can see your line, because especially if you're working it in some kind of finesse way, it really helps to see your line. And that's the only thing. That's the only difference. So maybe for jerk baits, it's just not that good. Now I mean, I can't go back out again because it feels like a curse, that yellow line. So going back with the green line again, another Power Pro green. I'm going out tomorrow to an area I haven't fished for since last spring, and I'm hoping the fish have moved in there. It's a great place for the bigger trout, and of course I'm after a 20-inch trout that I can release and enter in to the Release Over 20 program. And they've got as many 20-inch trout there as anywhere else that I fish at the right time of the year. It's just coming into that time when they should be moving into that shallow area. So I'm just gonna have to see. I haven't been there. I don't know anybody who's been there yet, and it's gonna be an exploratory trip. So we'll see what happens. So this is a little guy, not the 20-inch by any means, but there is some activity out here. Turned out to not be the day I expected it to be. It's been so windy this morning from the north, but it's really not that bad out here. It's about 60 degree, high 50s, air temperature, water temperature 65. So I've been working top water. I got one blow up. It wasn't a big trout. I actually saw it. By the way, you know, talking about yellow line, I always use leaders, floral leaders, sometimes mono leaders on all my braided main lines. So and it usually 4 to 6 foot long, and then I'll work it down to maybe 3 and then change it. So in case you were wondering about yellow line and whether I tied it directly to the lure, no, I tie it directly to the lure. I watch the wind forecast pretty closely, and I really like those models, like from Windfinder and some of those. And I'm sure that on any particular day they're accurate for somewhere in the world. It just seems like if there's any storms around, if there's any fronts or chance of any kind of weather like that, the wind's going to be 10 mile an hour faster than they say, and it's going to be from a wrong direction. So that's the way it was today. It's just terrible north wind blowing, unrelenting, and it was supposed to be a fairly calm day. So it just makes fishing more complicated. Your equipment does it work as well. You can't fish maybe everywhere you would like to fish, but that's par for the course. You're in nature, and that's the way nature is. So this time of the year, the trout are going to start moving shallow, especially the big trout. And so when I'm pursuing that 20-inch trout, this is one of the areas I'm going to go to, because they'll get up in the shallow water. You can get to them. You can find them with certain techniques anyway, and top water is one of the best techniques. And I threw top water. I just tried to stay on top water all day because I was trying to catch that 20-inch trout. You can fish other techniques in those areas too, and you can catch a lot of trout with those. You know, the popping cork, of course, is going to catch you a lot of trout in 12 to 14, maybe 16-inch, and you'll catch a 20-inch trout on a popping cork too. I've done that. Jerk baits, but the thing is that a lot of these areas, the big trout are going to be sticking around the widgeon grass beds. Sometimes they'll be, especially if the water's higher, they'll be right up on the grass lines, on the shorelines, like points. I've caught a lot of big trout off points right on top of the grass. You have a little bit of water, a little more water depth. You throw top water, bring it across that point, and they'll slam it. So I just stuck to top water all day. I got 4 big blow-ups. I got some smaller ones too, but I got 4 legitimate blow-ups that all could have been larger trout. One of those I had hooked up for about, I don't know, 5-10 seconds. It was taking drag, and it had turned my medium action rod into a C. So I know it was a big trout. It was heartbreaking to lose that fish, because that most likely was a 20-inch plus trout. I mean, you could argue it was a giant bass, but that would even be rarer than a 20-inch trout. So I think I missed that one today, but that's okay. I needed to go and explore. It does look like the trout are starting to move up shallow, which is a great thing. And top water is going to be one of the best approaches. You know, they like that splish splash zigzag motion of when you do a walk the dog. It just attracts a bigger trout for whatever reason. You can theorize about what that would be. It just is consistently better. And it's not only that, it's that you can fish a top water bait on top of widgeon grass beds or near the beds. You can, if you have a little bit of water depth, if the water's a bit high and there's high tide, you can throw it over top of the beds and right up to the shoreline. So right up to the shoreline points. It's very productive. And I did try a number of different baits. A She Dog, I tried this is a Spook Junior 1-knocker. Tried the Berkley Cane Walker. This is a bait that I've gotten this year, just recently, this winter, and it's an interesting bait. It's got, it's a hybrid. It's got the popper front. This one has some nice color. I like the colors on it, and it'll walk quite nicely too. So those big strikes all came on the She Dog, which, I mean, I don't know how much credence you'd put on that today, because it was such a kind of bad weather day, and if there aren't that many fish, you don't know if you're just not where the fish are when you're trying other baits. So I tend to think that the most important thing is just to have a top water and work it effectively. One of the repercussions of fishing with the top water is missed hits. And that's really common with the topwater bait, because, I mean, it's moving from side to side on the surface, and then if it's windy like today, there's waves, it's moving up and down as well. So it's moving in a three-dimensional pattern, so it's a lot harder for a trout to get it in its mouth, at least on the first try. And some people believe that the trout will even just smack a bait like that, just with some part of their body to injure it or stun it, and then come back and finish it off. And it seems like a reasonable theory to me. I have no way of proving that. But I do know that if you get a big strike, stop the bait, and you don't get a hookup, stop the bait, and then restart it, and the trout will come back sometimes and get that. So that would, that might be one supporting indicator that they do smack it sometimes, just out of convenience to stop it and make it a little easier to catch the bait. I was also throwing in the grass beds. I was throwing the slick. I've been messing around with this bait this winter. It's pretty cool. It's got a big profile and it looks a lot like a mullet. So if you're fishing it in the grass, and then this big beast hook gets exposed when the bait if a trout pushes it down, which hookups are a bit challenging for me with this one as well. If you're fishing in the grass beds, you've got grass that may be interfering, getting between the bait and the hook and the fish's mouth, and also just getting the hook to expose well and getting a good hook set's a bit of a challenge. But hey, it's just like a topwater. Yeah, you're going to get missed strikes, but you got to initiate the strike to start with, or you're just wasting your time. So you got to do that. I also fished jerkbait some. This is a Cutter 90. You saw the fish caught on this bait. This is a bait I've been using all winter and just really slamming. It's a new bait to me, but this has got a pretty decent fall rate and good action. And I was using it along the rocks of the Mr. Go like all winter long, and just hammering the big trout along there. Really good bait. But again, a jerk bait, you're not going to be able to fish that up against the grass along the widgeon grass beds, or certainly not over them or up against the shoreline. So, if you fish that out in the middle of those inner marsh lakes, you can slam a lot of trout that way too. And sometimes the bigger trout will be out there, especially during the day on a bright day. They'll move off of the shoreline and then into the center of these lakes. So I often drift the lakes that way. But anyway, come on, big girls. I'm waiting for you up in the marsh. And hope you can get out there. Hope you can land and release a 20-inch trout. And it's going to be my objective for fishing in the next couple of months.